My mom asked me to fund her golden son's dream trip, but when she erased everything I did, I gave her a wake-up call she'll never forget. I am Amanda Wilson, 34 years old, and the corporate executive who financially supports my entire family. Growing up, I was always in my brother Jason's shadow despite my academic excellence. From elementary school through high school, I maintained straight A's, while Jason struggled to pass his classes. Yet, somehow, my report cards were met with a casual good job, while Jason bringing home a C- warranted celebration dinners and new video games. My mother would beam with pride at his mediocrity while treating my achievements as expected, nothing special. Jason just needs more encouragement, she would explain when I questioned the difference in treatment. You are naturally smart, Amanda. Your brother has to work harder. The irony was that Jason rarely worked at anything. He spent his afternoons playing sports or video games while I studied until midnight. My father, Thomas, was no better. He recognized my achievements more than my mother did, occasionally offering a proud smile or pat on the shoulder, but he never intervened when the favoritism became obvious. He was the classic passive enabler, wanting peace more than fairness. Your mother loves you both equally, he would whisper after particularly painful episodes of favoritism. She just shows it differently. His words never matched the reality I lived. I tried everything to earn their love. I joined every club, won every competition, and brought home every academic honor possible. I thought if I just achieved enough, they would finally see me. They would finally love me the way they loved Jason. That motivation drove me through my childhood into adulthood. When college application time came, I applied for every scholarship available. I knew asking my parents for financial help would be pointless. They had already told me they were saving for Jason's education, even though he showed zero interest in college. I received a full academic scholarship to Northwestern University, while Jason decided to take some time off after barely graduating high school. College was difficult without family support. While my classmates received care packages and spending money from home, I worked 20 hours a week at the campus library to afford basics like toothpaste and winter boots. Phone calls home were brief, with my mother always more interested in telling me about Jason's latest temporary job or girlfriend than asking about my accomplishments. I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in finance and business administration. My parents attended graduation but left early because Jason had a recreational softball game that afternoon. I tried not to let it hurt me, but it did. My first corporate job came with Morgan Stanley, where I quickly established myself as someone willing to work harder than anyone else. I volunteered for the difficult projects, the weekend work, the international calls at 3 in the morning. Within 4 years, I had been promoted 3 times. Meanwhile, my family situation evolved in predictable ways. Jason bounced between jobs, never lasting more than 6 months anywhere. He moved back home at 25 after his third apartment eviction. My parents welcomed him, converting their home office into his bedroom. My parents retired earlier than they should have, their savings inadequate for the lifestyle they wanted. My father had health issues that drained their accounts. Within 2 years of their retirement, they began calling me for small loans that were never repaid. At first, it was a few $100s here and there. Then it became mortgage payments, car repairs, and medical bills. Jason remained unemployed more often than not, contributing nothing to the household expenses while consuming resources. When he did work, his money went toward toys for himself, new gaming systems, expensive sneakers, nights out with friends. I became the financial backbone of the family by my early 30s. My executive position at Goldman Sachs came with a substantial salary and bonuses, and an increasing percentage went to supporting my family. I paid off my parents' mortgage, funded their retirement accounts, covered Jason's car insurance, and established an emergency fund they could access. I did this quietly, never expecting gratitude, but hoping for basic respect. 2 months ago, Jason mentioned wanting to see Japan. He had developed an interest in anime and Japanese culture and thought a vacation would help him find direction. My mother immediately called me, explaining how such a trip would be transformative for Jason, how he needed this opportunity. When I hesitated, she reminded me of my fortunate position and family responsibility. My quarterly bonus had just been deposited. It was substantial, a reward for bringing in 2 major international clients. I agreed to help with the trip, thinking perhaps this could be a turning point for Jason. Perhaps experiencing another culture might inspire him toward independence. My mother suggested a family dinner to thank me properly for my generosity. I was touched by the gesture, thinking finally my contributions would be acknowledged. How wrong I was. I arrived at Le Bernardin, the expensive French restaurant I had made reservations for, with high hopes for a pleasant evening with my family. I had specifically chosen this restaurant because my mother had once mentioned wanting to try it, and I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to make her happy while also receiving some appreciation for my financial support. I wore a navy blue dress that I had bought specifically for the occasion and even left work early to get my hair done. The restaurant glowed with soft lighting, white tablecloths pristine against dark wood furnishings. When I arrived, my parents and Jason were already seated. My mother wore the pearl necklace I had given her for her 60th birthday. My father looked uncomfortable in his suit but had made the effort. Jason wore jeans and a wrinkled button-down shirt, his concession to the upscale dress code. Amanda, finally, my mother said as I sat down. We were about to order without you. Sorry, traffic was terrible, I replied, though I was exactly on time. This place looks beautiful. It is nice, my father agreed, looking around appreciatively. Very fancy. Well, we have something to celebrate, my mother said, smiling at Jason, who was already on his second bread roll. The first part of the dinner went smoothly. We ordered appetizers and main courses, the conversation flowing easily around neutral topics, a new movie release, the unseasonably warm weather, the excellent food. I began to relax, thinking perhaps this would be the family dinner I had always wanted. After our main courses arrived, my mother cleared her throat and reached into her large handbag. I have something special tonight, she announced, pulling out a small wrapped package. I assumed it was a thank you card, perhaps containing a heartfelt note of appreciation for my financial support. I smiled, genuinely touched by the gesture. But my mother did not hand the package to me. Instead, she slid it across the table to Jason, whose face lit up in excitement. Jason has been wanting this trip for so long, she said, beaming at him. And now his dream is coming true. Jason unwrapped the package to reveal an envelope. Inside were printed flight confirmations and tickets to Japan, first class. The tickets I had purchased with my bonus money. Mom, these are awesome, Jason exclaimed, pulling out the tickets and reservation confirmations. First class. I cannot believe it. You deserve the best, my mother replied, reaching over to squeeze his hand. Then she looked at him with an expression of such raw love that it physically hurt me to witness. You know, you were only here because I felt sorry for you. I wanted you to have this experience. You work so hard. The table fell silent. My father looked down at his plate. Jason seemed momentarily confused by her phrasing but quickly returned to examining the flight details. I sat frozen, the fork in my hand suddenly heavy as lead. The words echoed in my head, you were only here because I felt sorry for you. My mother had not even acknowledged that I had paid for the tickets. She had presented them as her gift to Jason, taking full credit for my generosity. More painful was the realization that she had never once felt sorry enough for me to provide the emotional support I craved throughout my life. The unfairness crashed over me like a tidal wave. This is going to be amazing, Jason continued, oblivious to my distress. 2 weeks in Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka, 5-star hotels, guided tours. We packed all the details into the itinerary, my mother added proudly. Everything is taken care of. Everything is paid for, my father corrected gently, glancing at me. It was the closest anyone would come to acknowledging my contribution. My mother ignored him. You will love the hotel in Tokyo. It has a rooftop pool and is walking distance to all the major attractions. The conversation continued around me as they discussed Jason's upcoming adventure. My mother had apparently researched Japanese customs to prepare him. My father mentioned landmarks he should visit. Not once did anyone thank me or even acknowledge that my bonus had funded this entire experience. I maintained my composure, nodding at appropriate intervals and making small talk while my mind raced. Years of similar treatment flooded back. Birthdays where Jason received expensive gifts while I got practical items, college years without emotional or financial support, accomplishments overlooked while Jason's smallest efforts were celebrated. This dinner was supposed to be different. This dinner was supposedly to thank me. Yet here I sat, invisible once again, except as the financial provider. When dessert arrived, I politely declined. "I have an early meeting tomorrow," I explained, placing my napkin beside my plate. "But you haven't even had dessert," my mother protested weakly. "The chocolate soufflé here is their specialty," my father added. "I'm really tired," I insisted with a forced smile. "Jason, enjoy your trip." "Excuse me." I signed the check without looking at the total, knowing it would be exorbitant. No one offered to contribute or even examine the bill. "Thank you for dinner, Amanda," my father said as I stood. "Yes, thanks for dinner," Jason echoed, still examining his flight documents. My mother merely nodded, already discussing with Jason what souvenirs he should bring back. I walked out of the restaurant with perfect posture, my face a mask of calm. Only when I reached my car did I allow the first tears to fall. I sat in the parking garage for nearly 30 minutes, sobbing quietly while processing what had happened. On the drive home, a cold clarity began to replace my hurt. For decades, I had allowed this treatment. I had funded their lives while receiving nothing in return, not even basic respect or acknowledgement. The dinner was not a thank you. It was another manipulation, another extraction of resources. For the first time, I began to consider what consequences might look like. What would happen if I stopped being the family ATM? What would happen if, for once, my family had to face the results of their actions and attitudes? By the time I reached my apartment, my sadness had hardened into resolve. This would be the last time they took advantage of me, the last time I silently accepted being invisible, except for my checkbook. Once inside my apartment, I kicked off my heels and sat at my dining table, opening my laptop. This would be a night of reflection and action. I needed to see exactly what I had given my family over the years to understand the full scope of my enabling behavior. I pulled up financial records from the past 5 years. The numbers were staggering when compiled. Beyond the Japan trip, I had paid $90,000 toward my parents' mortgage, $45,000 in property taxes, $32,000 for my father's medical expenses not covered by insurance, $28,000 for my mother's new car, and countless smaller expenses. Jason's portion included $17,000 for car repairs and insurance, $11,000 in rent during his brief periods of independence, and approximately $20,000 in miscellaneous expenses, including his gym membership, phone bill, and even dating app subscriptions. All told, I had given my family over $250,000 in 5 years, not including the Japan trip, which added another $30,000. None of it had ever been repaid. None of it had ever been properly acknowledged. I sat back, stunned by the total. With that money, I could have bought a vacation home, funded an advanced degree, or significantly increased my retirement savings. Instead, I had poured it into a family that saw me only as a resource. The realization brought me to a decision point: continue enabling their behavior or finally stand up for myself. The pain of the dinner, of my mother's words, made the choice clear. I would no longer be their silent benefactor. I began methodically. First, I logged into the airline website where I had booked Jason's flights. As the purchaser, I had full access to the reservation. I navigated to the cancellation page and confirmed the action. The system informed me that the miles would be returned to my account and the taxes and fees refunded to my credit card. Next came the hotel reservations. I had booked 3 different luxury hotels across Japan, all prepaid. One by one, I canceled each reservation, noting the refund policies. 2 would provide complete refunds, the third would charge a one-night penalty for late cancellation. I accepted the small cost as part of my liberation. The rental car reservation, the airport transfers, the guided tours, the restaurant reservations. I canceled everything methodically, watching as confirmation emails flooded my inbox. The miles transfer was more technically challenging. I had transferred 150,000 miles from my account to Jason's for future travel flexibility. This required a phone call to the airline's customer service. This is highly unusual, the representative informed me after I explained my request. Miles transfers are typically non-reversible. I understand, I replied calmly. However, these miles were transferred fraudulently. I did not authorize this transfer. It was not entirely true, but I no longer cared. Additionally, I am a Diamond Medallion member with over 2 million lifetime miles. I would hate to take my loyalty elsewhere. After 20 minutes on hold and speaking with a supervisor, the representative returned. As an exception, we will reverse the miles transfer. Please allow 24 to 48 hours for processing. Thank you, I said, a small smile forming. I appreciate your assistance. The emergency account was my final target. 3 years ago, I had established a dedicated savings account for my family's emergencies, providing them access through a secondary account holder status. The account currently held $22,000. I logged into my banking portal and initiated a freeze on the account, preventing any withdrawals without my express verification. As I worked, my phone repeatedly lit up with calls and texts, my mother wondering if I had gotten home safely, Jason thanking me for dinner, my father asking if I was feeling all right. I ignored them all. By 1 a.m, I had completed every cancellation possible. I had systematically dismantled the trip and restricted access to the funds I had provided. My family would discover the consequences in just a few hours when they attempted to check in for their flight. For the first time in years, I slept deeply and dreamlessly, unburdened by the weight of family obligation. When I woke at 6:30, I had 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. I ignored them all and prepared for work as usual, applying makeup carefully and selecting a crimson blouse that made me feel powerful. As I sipped my morning coffee, I received an email notification from the airline, boarding denied at security checkpoint. They had attempted to check in and been turned away. The flight had departed without them. My phone rang again. My mother's face appeared on the screen. I declined the call and put my phone on silent. Then I gathered my belongings and headed to the office, my heart lighter than it had been in years. Throughout the morning, voicemails accumulated. I listened to them during my lunch break, alone in my office with a salad untouched before me. Amanda, there's been a terrible mistake with our tickets. My mother's voice was controlled but tight with panic. Call me immediately. What the hell happened to the reservations? Jason's angry voice demanded in the next message. They say everything is cancelled. Call me back. Amanda, please call us back, my father's concerned tone. We're stranded at the airport and need your help sorting this out. With each message, my resolve strengthened. For once, they would face consequences. For once, they would not be able to take my contributions for granted. For once, I would not be invisible. By noon, I decided to answer my phone. It rang almost immediately, my mother's name flashing on the screen. I took a deep breath and accepted the call. Amanda, finally, my mother's voice was shrill with indignation. We've been trying to reach you for hours. There's been a horrible mistake with the reservations. There is no mistake, I replied, my voice calm and level. I cancelled everything last night. A stunned silence followed. Then, you what? Why would you do such a thing? We're standing at the airport with nowhere to go. I think you know why, I said. Last night made some things very clear to me. What are you talking about? She demanded. We had a lovely dinner. Is this about me giving Jason the tickets? I was just presenting them nicely for you. No, Mother, I said. This is about you saying, and I quote, you were only here because I felt sorry for you while giving my brother tickets that I paid for. Tickets you presented as if they were from you without acknowledging my contribution at all. You're being ridiculous, she said. I was talking to Jason, not you. And of course, everyone knew you paid for the tickets. That was understood. Nothing was understood or acknowledged, I countered. Just like nothing I do for this family is ever properly acknowledged. My mother's tone shifted to wounded indignation. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us, by humiliating us at the airport? Before I could respond, I heard shuffling, and then Jason's voice came through, loud and angry. What the hell, Amanda? You ruined everything. They wouldn't let us through security. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? About as embarrassing as watching Mom give you credit for tickets I paid for, I replied evenly. About as embarrassing as having my financial support taken for granted year after year. Oh, please, he scoffed. Just because you have a fancy job and make good money doesn't mean you get to lord it over everyone. Family helps family. Family respects family, I countered. Family acknowledges contributions. Family doesn't take advantage. More shuffling, and my father came on the line. His voice was calmer but strained. Amanda, honey, I understand you're upset. But this isn't the way to handle it. We're stuck at the airport. Can we please discuss this like adults after you restore the reservations? I'm handling it exactly the way I should have years ago, I said. I'm done being the silent ATM for this family. I'm done watching my contributions be ignored while Jason is celebrated for doing nothing. That's not fair, my father protested weakly. What's not fair is decades of favoritism, I said. What's not fair is me paying off your mortgage while you thank me with a card but throw Jason a party when he holds a job for 3 months. What's not fair is last night's dinner, which was supposedly to thank me but actually became another celebration of Jason. More background noise, and my mother returned to the phone. I've never shown favoritism, she declared, though her voice wavered. I've always loved you both equally. You were just more independent. You didn't need as much attention. I needed exactly as much attention as any child does, I said, feeling a lifetime of hurt rising in my throat. I needed exactly as much love and acknowledgement and celebration. I needed exactly as much support. The difference is that I learned to live without it because I had no choice. You're being dramatic, my mother insisted, but with less conviction. I'm being honest for the first time, and honesty requires action, not just words, I said. I've cancelled the Japan trip. I've reversed the miles transfer, and I've frozen the emergency account. From now on, my financial support comes with conditions, respect, acknowledgement, and reciprocity. You can't do this, my mother gasped. That emergency money is ours. No, it's mine, I corrected. Money I earned and provided to you out of love and duty. Money that was never acknowledged or appreciated. This is blackmail, Jason shouted in the background. This is consequences, I corrected. Something you've rarely experienced. What about our hotel in Japan? My mother asked, her voice suddenly small. It's already booked and paid for. We were going to fly out today. I cancelled that too, I said. In fact, they should be receiving notification right about now that the reservation has been cancelled and the deposit refunded. But our bags are already checked, she wailed. You'll need to retrieve them from the airline, I explained calmly. I suggest you do that now before they get sent to lost and found. You can't just leave us stranded like this, my father interjected. We have no way to get home. The shuttle return isn't until next week. I sighed. I'll send a car service to pick you up from the airport and take you home. That's the extent of my assistance today. And then what? My mother demanded. You'll just cut us off completely? No, I replied. I'll establish boundaries. We'll have a conversation about the future of our relationship, including any financial support. But that conversation won't happen today while emotions are high. You'll regret this, Jason threatened. Family is forever, Amanda. You can't just walk away. I'm not walking away from family, I clarified. I'm walking away from being taken advantage of. There's a difference. Please, Amanda, my mother's voice had turned pleading. Restore the reservations. We can talk about your feelings when we get back from Japan. No, I said firmly. The trip is cancelled. The discussion about our relationship happens before any further financial support, not after. I ended the call despite their continued protests. Within 5 minutes, I had arranged for a car service to pick them up from the airport and take them home. I sent the confirmation details in a text message to my father, knowing he was the most likely to read it calmly. For the rest of the afternoon, I fielded angry texts and voicemails. Jason called me selfish and ungrateful. My mother veered between righteous indignation and tearful manipulation. My father made halting attempts at mediation, acknowledging some of my points while still pushing for restoration of the trip. I responded to none of them. Instead, I worked steadily through my afternoon meetings, my mind clearer than it had been in years. For the first time, I had stood up for myself. For the first time, I had demanded respect rather than silently hoping for it. That evening, I received a notification that the car service had completed the trip, delivering my family home. An hour later, a final text came from my mother. The hotel called. They said our reservation was cancelled and our deposit refunded. I hope you're happy now. I was not happy, but I was resolved. And for now, that was enough. The following day, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I needed space to process the seismic shift in my family relationships. My apartment felt both like a sanctuary and a prison as I moved restlessly from room to room, alternating between certainty in my actions and waves of guilt. Had I gone too far? The question haunted me as I made tea I did not drink and stared out windows without seeing the view. My family had taken advantage of me for years, yes, but was stranding them at the airport too harsh a response? Should I have confronted them directly rather than taking such dramatic action? By mid-morning, I called my closest friend, Rachel, who had witnessed my family dynamic for years. I did something extreme, I began when she answered. Does it involve your family? She asked immediately. Yes. Then it was probably justified, she replied without hesitation. What happened? I explained the dinner, my mother's words, and my subsequent actions. Rachel listened without interrupting, a skill I had always appreciated in her. Amanda, she said when I finished, the only shocking thing is that it took you this long to stand up for yourself. Do you know how painful it has been watching you pour money and love into people who never reciprocate? You didn't go too far. If anything, this was overdue. Her words loosened something in my chest. But they're still my family. Yes, she said. And they've abused that bond for years. Family means mutual respect and support, not a one-way street where you give and they take. We talked for nearly 2 hours, Rachel gently but firmly reinforcing that my actions were justified. By the time we hung up, I felt steadier. That afternoon, I received a text from my father. Your mother is very upset. Can we talk calmly about this situation? I did not respond immediately. Instead, I opened my laptop and made an appointment with a therapist I had seen briefly after a difficult breakup years before. Dr. Martinez had been insightful then, perhaps she could help me navigate this situation now. The earliest appointment was 3 days away. I confirmed it, then finally replied to my father, I need some time. We can talk next week after I've had space to think. The days that followed were emotionally turbulent. I returned to work, throwing myself into projects to avoid dwelling on the situation. My boss, Victoria, noticed my distraction during a presentation. Amanda, is everything all right? She asked after the meeting. You seem off your game. I hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. Family issues. Nothing I can't handle, but it's taking some mental energy. Victoria nodded sympathetically. Family can be complicated. Take the time you need. Your work has always been exemplary. You've earned some grace. Her understanding almost brought me to tears. Why could my own family not offer the same respect and recognition that my boss did? On Thursday, I confided in Sarah, a colleague I trusted. We were having lunch in the company cafeteria when she commented on my subdued mood. I finally stood up to my family, I explained, picking at my salad. They've been taking financial advantage for years, and I reached a breaking point. Good for you, Sarah said firmly. I went through something similar with my brother a few years ago. He expected me to bail him out of every financial mess while never acknowledging my help. Setting boundaries was the hardest and best thing I ever did. How did he take it? I asked. Terribly at first, she admitted. There were angry calls, guilt trips, even attempts to get other family members to pressure me, but eventually he had to stand on his own feet. Now our relationship is actually better because it's based on mutual respect rather than dependency. Her experience gave me hope. Perhaps this painful process could lead to healthier relationships in the long run. My session with Dr. Martinez proved invaluable. After listening to my story, she helped me see patterns I had been blind to for years. You've been trying to purchase the love and approval your parents withheld, she observed. But love cannot be bought, and conditional approval is not worth having. So what do I do now? I asked. Maintain your boundaries, she advised. Be clear about what you need from these relationships going forward. Expect resistance and manipulation, but stand firm. And most importantly, start investing in relationships that nourish you rather than drain you. The weekend brought renewed attempts at contact from my family. My mother left tearful voicemails about how I had broken her heart. Jason sent angry texts accusing me of destroying the family. My father tried a more reasonable approach, acknowledging that perhaps they had taken my generosity for granted, but suggesting that my response was disproportionate. I listened to and read their messages but replied to none. I needed to break the pattern of immediate response, of dropping everything to address their needs while neglecting my own. Instead, I focused on small acts of self-care, a long walk in the park, a massage I had been postponing for months, cooking myself a proper meal rather than grabbing takeout. I bought a journal and began recording my thoughts and feelings, surprised by how clarifying it was to see them on paper. By Sunday evening, I felt strong enough to send a group text to my family. I'm ready to discuss our situation. Let's meet at my apartment next Saturday at 2 p.m. This will be a conversation about our relationship moving forward, including any financial support. Please come prepared to listen as well as speak. My mother responded immediately, why do we have to wait until Saturday? This is urgent. I did not take the bait. Saturday at 2. If that doesn't work for you, let me know and we can find another time that does. After a pause, my father replied, we'll be there. The week that followed was focused on preparation. I met with Dr. Martinez again, role-playing the upcoming conversation. I created a clear list of boundaries and expectations. I worked with my financial advisor to determine what level of support I could provide while still prioritizing my own financial health and goals. The night before the meeting, I cleaned my apartment thoroughly, prepared simple refreshments, and arranged seating in my living room. Physical preparation helped calm my nerves about the emotional confrontation to come. Whatever happened tomorrow would reshape my family relationships permanently. For the first time, I was entering such a conversation with clear boundaries and expectations rather than a desperate hope for approval. The realization was both terrifying and liberating. 1 month after the confrontation with my family, I stood in my new apartment, 15 miles from my previous residence and considerably farther from my parents' home. The move had been part of my fresh start, creating physical distance to reinforce the emotional boundaries I had established. The apartment reflected my changing priorities, a dedicated home office for work I now confined to business hours, a yoga space for the practice I had begun, bookshelves filled with novels I was finally making time to read. Even my appearance had changed. I had cut my hair shorter, adopted a more colorful wardrobe, and the perpetual tension in my shoulders had noticeably decreased. The family meeting had been difficult but necessary. My parents and Jason had arrived simultaneously, their faces showing a mixture of anger, confusion, and weariness. I had greeted them politely, but without the effusive welcome they were accustomed to. Thank you for coming, I had said, gesturing to the seating I had arranged. Would anyone like coffee or water before we begin? The small talk had been painfully awkward, but I had allowed it to continue briefly before directing us to the purpose of the gathering. I've asked you here to discuss our relationship moving forward. I had begun, specifically the dynamics around financial support and mutual respect. What followed was 3 hours of difficult conversation. I had presented clear evidence of the one-sided nature of our relationship, including financial records and specific examples of disrespect and favoritism. My mother had initially denied everything. My father had looked increasingly uncomfortable, and Jason had alternated between defensive anger and sullen silence. The turning point came when I stated plainly, I'm willing to maintain relationships with all of you, but they must be based on mutual respect. I'm not willing to be valued only for what I can provide financially. We don't value you just for your money, my mother had protested. Then name 3 things you've celebrated about me in the past year that weren't related to my career or financial support, I had challenged. Her silence had been deafening. Now, a month later, the changes were evident. Jason had found employment at a local marketing firm, a position below his qualifications, but steady work nonetheless. He had texted me about it with a brief, started new job today. Going well so far. It was the closest to initiative he had shown in years. My parents were adjusting to their new financial reality. I had agreed to continue covering my father's medical expenses and to provide a modest monthly stipend for essentials, but the unlimited access to funds was over. They had downsized their cable package, begun shopping sales for groceries, and my mother had even mentioned looking for part-time work to supplement their retirement income. The most significant change was in our communication. The daily calls demanding assistance had stopped. When we did speak, the conversations were more balanced, with occasional questions about my life and interests. It was progress, albeit tentative and sometimes forced. My mother continued to make occasional attempts at manipulation. Last week, she had called about a medical emergency that turned out to be seasonal allergies, transparently hoping I would offer financial assistance for unnecessary tests. When I suggested over-the-counter remedies instead, her disappointment was palpable. I thought you'd be more concerned, she had said, her voice taking on the wounded tone I knew so well. I'm concerned about your health, I had replied calmly. But allergies rarely require emergency medical intervention. If symptoms persist or worsen, we can discuss next steps. She had hung up shortly after, but there had been no follow-up drama. My consistency was slowly teaching her that the old tactics no longer worked. My father was making more genuine efforts at connection. He had started sending me articles about topics I was interested in, a small but meaningful acknowledgement that I existed beyond my capacity to provide financial support. Last Sunday, he had called just to tell me about a documentary he thought I might enjoy. We had spoken for 20 minutes about it, possibly the first conversation in our adult relationship that had not veered toward family problems or money. In my professional life, the changes were equally significant. Without the constant drain of family emergencies, I had found new focus and creativity in my work. 2 weeks ago, Victoria had called me into her office. The Singapore project was exceptional, she had said without preamble. The board specifically mentioned your presentation in their feedback. Thank you, I had replied, genuinely pleased by the recognition. I'd like to discuss a potential promotion, she had continued, to Senior Vice President of International Acquisitions. It would mean more travel, but also a significant salary increase and equity options. In the past, I would have immediately calculated how much more I could do for my family with such an increase. Instead, I found myself considering what it would mean for my own goals, the possibility of buying a home instead of renting, investments for early retirement, perhaps even extended sabbaticals for travel. I'd be very interested in discussing this opportunity, I had told Victoria. When would the position begin? Potentially next quarter. Take some time to think about it, and we'll talk details next week. Beyond work, I had begun developing connections outside my family circle. I joined a book club that met monthly, started taking cooking classes on Thursdays, and reconnected with college friends I had lost touch with during my years of family-focused existence. I had even begun dating again after a 3-year hiatus. Nothing serious yet, but I had enjoyed dinner with Jordan, a corporate attorney I met through a colleague, and had plans for a second date next week. The conversation had been refreshingly free of family drama, focused instead on books, travel aspirations, and our shared love of obscure documentaries. Most importantly, I was learning to set and maintain boundaries in all areas of my life. I no longer checked email after 7 p.m. I declined projects that required working through weekends. I said no to social obligations that felt like obligations rather than pleasures. The family meeting had catalyzed this transformation. When I had laid out my new boundaries regarding financial support, my mother had accused me of being selfish. Is it selfish to want reciprocity in relationships? I had asked. Is it selfish to expect acknowledgement for contributions? Is it selfish to want to be valued for who I am rather than what I provide? She had not had an answer. Now, as I arranged books on my new shelves, my phone rang. It was my father. Amanda, your mother and I were wondering if you might join us for dinner this Sunday. Nothing fancy, just at the house. Jason mentioned he might come too. A month ago, such an invitation would have filled me with both hope and dread. Now, I evaluated it objectively. I could come for a couple of hours, I replied. What time were you thinking? Would 5 work? Your mother's making pot roast. That sounds fine. Would you like me to bring anything? Just yourself, he said, then added after a pause, we've missed you. The words were simple but sincere. For the first time in our relationship, I believed him. I'll see you Sunday, I said, and ended the call. I returned to my unpacking with a sense of cautious optimism. The road ahead with my family would not be easy. Old patterns would resurface, boundaries would need reinforcement. But for the first time, I was approaching our relationship from a position of strength rather than need. For the first time, I was prioritizing my own well-being alongside theirs. The journey of transformation had only just begun. But I was already walking taller, breathing easier, living more fully. Whatever came next, I would face it as the person I was choosing to become, not the person I had been forced to be. 6 months after the airport incident, I stood in my parents' kitchen, helping my mother prepare for a modest family gathering. The dynamics had shifted noticeably in the half-year since I had taken my stand. The initial anger and resentment had gradually given way to a tentative new normal, one based on more equal footing and mutual respect. Could you set the table, Amanda? My mother asked, her tone lacking the commanding edge it once held. Of course, I replied, gathering plates from the cabinet. For place settings? Yes, she said. Jason texted that he'll be here by 6. Jason had maintained his job at the marketing firm, recently receiving a small promotion to team lead. The steady income had allowed him to move into his own apartment 3 months ago, a modest 1-bedroom that he paid for himself. The change in him was remarkable. He carried himself differently, with a quiet pride that came from self-sufficiency. When he arrived precisely at 6, he brought a bottle of wine and a homemade dessert. I've been taking cooking classes, he explained, somewhat sheepishly, when I raised an eyebrow at the perfectly presented apple tart. Turns out I'm not half bad at baking. It looks delicious, I said sincerely. As we sat down to dinner, the conversation flowed more naturally than it had in years. My mother still occasionally slipped into old patterns, giving Jason excessive praise for basic adult accomplishments, but the blatant favoritism had diminished. My father, always the quieter presence, seemed more engaged, asking thoughtful questions about my recent business trip to London. The architecture must have been impressive, he commented. You always had an eye for design elements. The small observation, recognizing an interest of mine that had nothing to do with my financial contributions, warmed me unexpectedly. These moments of genuine connection, though still interspersed with awkward silences and occasional tension, were becoming more frequent. After dinner, as Jason and my father cleared the table, my mother gestured for me to join her on the back porch. We sat in adjacent rocking chairs, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, she began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant, about never feeling seen or celebrated the way Jason was. I remained silent, giving her space to continue. I didn't think I was showing favoritism, she said. I told myself Jason needed more support because he struggled more. But looking back, I can see how it must have seemed to you. It was not a full acknowledgement of the years of unequal treatment, but it was more reflection than she had ever offered before. Thank you for saying that, I replied simply. I won't pretend I understand all your choices, she continued. The way you handled the Japan trip still feels harsh to me, but I'm trying to see it from your perspective. That's all I've ever asked, I said. To be considered, to have my feelings and contributions valued. She nodded slowly. You're a good daughter, Amanda. Different from what I expected, but good in your own way. It was not the wholehearted validation I might have once craved, but I recognized it as significant progress from my mother. I reached over and briefly squeezed her hand, an acknowledgement of the effort she was making. Over the following months, my healing journey continued on multiple fronts. Weekly sessions with Dr. Martinez helped me process childhood patterns and develop healthier responses to family dynamics. I had begun to understand that while I could not change my family, I could change how I engaged with them. Your mother may never fully acknowledge the favoritism, Dr. Martinez had observed during a particularly insightful session. Her self-image depends on seeing herself as a good mother who treated her children fairly. Full acknowledgement would threaten that identity. So I should just accept that she'll never truly understand how she hurt me? I had asked, feeling the old pain resurface. Not exactly, she said. You can accept that her capacity for self-reflection has limitations while still maintaining your boundaries and truth. Complete validation from her would be healing, certainly, but it's not necessary for your healing. Those words had been transformative, freeing me from the need for my mother's complete understanding and acknowledgement. I could hold my truth while accepting the relationship's limitations. Outside my family, my life had blossomed in unexpected ways. My friendship circle had expanded through the book club and cooking classes. I had developed a particularly close bond with Elena, a graphic designer whose direct communication style and empathetic insights reminded me of what family support should feel like. My relationship with Jordan had deepened as well. After 4 months of dating, we had settled into a comfortable rhythm of weekend outings, thoughtful conversations, and genuine interest in each other's lives. He had met my family twice, observing the dynamics with the objective eye of an outsider. They're trying, he had commented after one dinner. I can see how it could have been much worse before. They are, I had agreed. And so am I. Professionally, I had accepted the promotion to senior vice president and reorganized my approach to work. I no longer stayed late routinely, delegated more effectively, and protected my personal time with the same vigor I had once reserved for work commitments. The emergency account I had established for my family remained, but with new parameters. My parents had limited access with withdrawal caps, and major expenses required discussion. To my surprise, they had only accessed it twice in 6 months, both times for legitimate medical needs that they had attempted to handle themselves first. Jason had not asked me for money since the airport incident. When he needed a security deposit for his apartment, he had taken extra shifts rather than calling me. The change suggested he had found something valuable in self-reliance that years of enabling had denied him. One Sunday afternoon, while having coffee with my father at a local cafe, he had looked at me with unusual directness. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. I should have protected you more as a child. I saw the favoritism, but told myself it wasn't my place to interfere with your mother's parenting. That was wrong. The acknowledgement, so long awaited, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thank you for saying that, I managed. You deserved better, he continued. And I'm proud of the woman you've become despite our failures. We had sat in companionable silence after that, the words hanging between us like a bridge newly constructed over troubled waters. My final act of healing came in the form of planning a vacation exclusively for myself. I had always traveled for work or family obligations, never purely for my own enjoyment. Now I booked 2 weeks in Italy, a country I had always wanted to explore at my own pace. When I mentioned the trip to my mother during our weekly phone call, she surprised me with her response. That sounds wonderful, Amanda. You work so hard. You deserve to enjoy the fruits of your labor. The words, so simple yet so validating, would have meant everything to me a year ago. Now they were welcome, but not necessary for my happiness. I had learned to provide my own validation, to celebrate my own accomplishments, to approve of my own choices. As I packed for my Italian adventure, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months, the painful dinner, the airport revenge, the difficult conversations that followed. None of it had been easy, but all of it had been necessary for my growth and the restructuring of my family relationships. I was not naive enough to believe the changes were permanent or complete. Old patterns would resurface, boundaries would require reinforcement. But the foundation had shifted from exploitation to something approaching mutual respect. It was enough to build upon. The night before my departure, I video called my family to say goodbye. Jason showed me the herb garden he had started on his apartment balcony. My father recommended history podcasts about Roman architecture. My mother, in her own way, wished me well. "Take lots of pictures," she said. "But more importantly, enjoy every moment. Life is too short to wait for permission to be happy." In those words, I heard an echo of wisdom that suggested perhaps she too had been on a journey of reflection. Perhaps we all had. As I ended the call and finished packing, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for decades. I had stopped trying to purchase love with financial support. I had stopped accepting scraps of affection as a feast. I had learned that true family, whether blood-related or chosen, involved reciprocity, respect, and recognition of each person's inherent value. The journey had been painful but necessary. The wounds were healing, not through erasure, but through acknowledgement and growth. I would carry the scars, but they no longer defined me. They simply marked the path I had walked to become the person I now was, whole, worthy, and finally, truly seen.